Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. On the show tonight, what the second wave of COVID with the new mutants means to patients, recovery and vaccines. How is it different from the original strain of coronavirus? How is this so important to all of us as we try and encounter this incredible threat? Also on the show, as we struggle with overwhelming numbers in India, we also look at the story of a small country that's winning against COVID, Israel. We'll be joined with Israel's envoy to India, Dr. Ron Malka. Israel is also stepping up aid to our country. The attachment between people in Israel and our country also very, very significant. But first, let's talk a little bit about mutants. Let's talk about some of the strains and then try and understand how what we are facing now in our hospitals and among those who are COVID positive is different from what it's been in the past, and the implications of this are fairly significant. So let's just bring up the first graphic over here. And what we are talking about are essentially two strains. The first one is called B.1.1.7. It's also known as the UK strain. Why is this important? Because this is the strain that caused havoc in the United Kingdom. There was a lockdown for 3 months. Finally, now the UK has started opening up after one of the most hectic programs of vaccination anywhere in the world. Now, this strain was been detected in India as well, and according to these government numbers on the 4th of May, there were 516 genetic sequences of this detected in Punjab, followed by Delhi, Telangana, Maharashtra and Karnataka. Why was the UK variant, or why is the UK variant significant? It's significant because it's very highly transmissible. That means it goes from one person to the other very, very fast. The numbers of people, therefore, for example, in a family who live together, might see many more people in that family being infected. But what we are really now worried about in India is something called the India double mutant. It's called B.1.617. It's got two mutations on what is called the spike protein of the cell of the virus itself, which enables it to be even perhaps more transmissible than the UK strain. And this is being detected now all over the world. We were talking about the UK strain being detected in India. Now the India strain, the B.1.617 strain, is being detected there as well. And as far as our country is concerned, as of the 4th of May, there have been 756 genetic sequences of this mutation, which is believed to be even more transmissible than the UK variant, which have been detected in Maharashtra, which saw that incredible surge, but it's somewhat better now, followed by Karnataka, Bengal, Delhi and Gujarat. And so let's take a look at the next image, which is the map. And red is B.1.1.7, that's the UK strain. And then the one we are talking about is the one in green, which is B.1.617. There are lots of other strains as well in smaller numbers, but that doesn't worry us as much as the one in red and as the one in green. If you're asking, what about the white ones? Well, those could be the original strain. Those could be strains which have not been detected. Those could be something which is not of that much concern. It's the red one, which is B.1.1.7, which is the UK strain, and the green one that you see. And as you can see, it's spread across the country. And what we are now told is that B.1.617, that's the India double mutant, is fast overtaking or has already overtaken the British variant, the UK variant, in large parts of our country. It's getting to that stage. So what we are trying to do on this program is try and understand what this means for patients in the country. Joining us now, Dr. Sushmita Roy Chaudhary, Director of Pulmonology at Fortis in Kolkata. We're also joined by Dr. Subramanian Swaminathan, Director of the Infectious Diseases and Infection Control Center at the Gleneagles Global Group. Thank you both very much for being with us. And Nishtha Sood, she is a parent who is going through hell with her little 10-year-old daughter, and she has the courage to come out and talk to us. But let me come to you first, Dr. Swaminathan. How are some of the cases you are seeing this year or in the last few weeks different from what you have encountered, say, last year?
Vishnu, I think you have beautifully encapsulated the changes that we have noticed. In the clinical setting, it's not just that the attack rate is higher, the asymptomatic numbers have come down. Even within the family, I've had all 4 people being admitted with severe COVID, all 4 requiring oxygen. one going into HFNC, one going to ventilator, and by the luck of grace of God, all 4 are going home today. But the point is that this kind of attack rates I have not seen last year. It's still to be remembered that most people are still mildly symptomatic, if at all, and most people are getting away with it. But the percentage of symptomaticity and the severity seems to be a little creepy. The speed at which progression occurs seems to be a little more unreliably predicted, and we are just not able to completely ascertain why they're moving so fast. Younger people moving so fast is obviously creepy. The number of pregnant women I'm seeing this time around really worries me, because it's so much more difficult handling pregnant mothers because of all the complications involved in it. And I'm not sure if we are completely geared up to handle that challenge. We are seeing an increasing number of adolescents coming to us today. I'm having an 18-year-old with severe COVID with me right now. So those kind of numbers really worry me. For now, at least, the pediatric age group is still not a major concern. But obviously, it has implications for the future on where we go from here. And of course, the usual issues about supplies, medications, all those things. We have a compressed peak, and that really scares the daylights out of all of us.
Yeah, Dr. Roy Chaudhary, do you believe that the greater demand for oxygen in a place like Delhi, for example, is directly linked to either the British strain, the UK strain, or the India double mutant?
Vishnu, I'm a clinician. I wouldn't know which strain I was treating. All I would be treating is a patient who came who was hypoxic or who had low oxygen levels. It wouldn't matter whether it was the British strain or the UK strain. But yes, the ones that are coming in the second wave to us are definitely way more. They're getting worse much quicker when they do. Most, as Dr. Swaminathan say, who are mild get better, and you find more people around you who are having it getting better. But the ones that come into hospital, they are getting much worse and requiring oxygen. And when they do require oxygen, you've got to give it to them till they need it.
Dr. Roy Chaudhary, if you talk about the lungs of these patients, is there more damage among patients that you've seen in the last few weeks than, say, what happened early last year?
Yes, absolutely. I think the last time initially we were not very well prepared, but when patients did come to us, we treated them, and the post-COVID phase, we were just dealing with it. So this is just the tip of the iceberg that we are seeing. 6 months down the line, pulmonologists all around the country and people who do medicine are going to be dealing with the aftermaths of it. Therefore, treating most of these patients properly right now is most important.
In fact, Dr. Roy Chaudhary, that was my next question to you. When we talk about the lungs being affected and the damage that you're seeing in the lungs, what does that mean? What sort of damage do you see our patients having to suffer, and what does that mean from a long-term prognosis?
Yeah, so basically it depends, how the virus behaves with the body depends from person to person. Three people in the same family might get affected. One might get away with just the sniffles and a body ache. The second one might have a little bit of a cough, a bit of shortness of breath, and some pneumonia. The third one might progress all the way to stiff lungs, what we called ARDS, needing ventilation. And if they are lucky enough to come out, they might be left with lungs that do not ventilate well or do not make enough oxygen. And that might leave them with breathlessness for a period of time. So my friends who are pathologists abroad and who routinely do autopsy on these patients tell me that most of these patients on autopsy have what we call diffuse alveolar damage, the ones that have not made it, or the ones that have gone on to severe category and have not lived to tell the tale. As diffuse alveolar damage, which basically means that the lung tissue itself is damaged so much so that, when it recovers, the lung can recover to a certain extent and no more. But again, the good news is that most patients who have come out and have had very severe damage, most of them will recover significant amount in 3 to 6 months' time, but need to be under regular follow-up.
Nishta, you've chosen to come and actually tell us about your little daughter and the experience you've had with her for a month now. What can you tell us? She's just 10 years old, right?
She's 10 years old and she contracted COVID last month, mid-April. She started with a throbbing headache and fever. And obviously she's so small, she knew what COVID is and she was highly overwhelmed with it, so were we. So I went in isolation with her. I couldn't leave my child alone. She didn't have many symptoms, just had fever, but she still continues to have fever. It's day 25 today. and she has 99 fever still. We've got all tests done, CT scan done. So yeah, so it's been really tough on, and I got fever too from her, and both my tests were negative. So we are still kind of isolating from our family, from my in-laws, and from my son who is just 12, and my husband. So we still don't know what to do.
Yeah. Dr. Swaminathan, could you tell us a little bit more about, COVID in children this time around, or young adults?
COVID in children behaves a little differently because the major manifestation is pretty mild, in that the amount of lung injury which is directly related to COVID is actually mild, but they have a risk of developing a rare immune-based disorder in the back end. It's pretty rare, but when it does happen, it can be pretty scary if it's not handled right. So I see a lot of immunological manifestations. And to me, you need to understand it's a part of a spectrum. If you look at all the injury that happens even in adults, it's again immune-based. That would explain why steroids are so important. See, you would not give steroids for any other infectious disease. It just is, it just doesn't make sense. But here we give steroids as a life-saving medicine because it's an immune-based injury. And in children, that immune-based injury is a slightly different manifestation. And it's akin to something which we see otherwise in children called Kawasaki. It's something very similar to that, but a little different. In that, it's an immune-based manifestation, and therefore it needs to be evaluated differently. So when I see this kind of prolonged manifestations, I always look at whether it's an immune dysfunction which is causing the fever. We know for a fact that beyond 2 weeks, virus viability is practically zero. So it's not the virus which is doing that, but the host immune system which is dysregulated, and it needs to be tinkered with. Yeah, it needs to be titrated and calibrated correctly, because I'll tell you what's happening. Today, just like in children, even in adults, because it's a runaway gravy train, people are, overdosing on steroids. I've seen up to 1 gram of steroids being given at a shot, and people are going into diabetic ketoacidosis and stuff like that and dying of that as well. So, it's all over the place, and this needs a more systematic and a better understanding of the mechanism of the disease.
Dr. Roy Chaudhary, would you like to add to that? There is this tremendous overuse on certain occasions of steroids that results in all sorts of other complications. How important is it for people to be careful about the medication that they use?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are lucky to be in a country like India, where anybody can just get anything across the table, just ask for it and get it. So steroids is a double-edged sword in COVID. So COVID itself is 3 phases. The first phase is the viral phase, which lasts for the first 7 to 10 days. And then is the inflammatory phase. So viral phase is when the virus is multiplying inside your body. People, most people, I get so many phone calls. My fever is not abating. My friends took steroids and they got better. So let me start steroids myself as well. Doctor, how much steroids should I take? And that's where they do the mistake. A lot of, doctors do that too. That in the beginning of the first phase, when it's the viral phase, when the virus is replicating, if you give an immunosuppressive as strong as a steroid to your body is unable to fight the virus. And that's when the virus replicates more, and there are more people that come into hospital. You do yourself damage. So avoid taking any steroids in the first 7 to 10 days, unless your doctor feels that you need to take it, unless you're in hospital. Secondly, unless somebody's lungs are affected, which is affecting their oxygen making capacity, which we call as low saturations, steroids are not indicated, and most studies have shown that there is no extra benefit. Instead, as Dr. Swaminathan said, you might land up with a lot of problems akin to steroids. It should never be self-prescribed. It should only be taken if your doctor feels you need to take it, and most definitely not in the first phase of the infection.
All right, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. And Nishtha, I'm sure your daughter will get better, and I'm sure you'll get better as well. And our best wishes to you and certainly to your daughter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we reflect on our situation in India, on the overall COVID situation, it's also important to look at what is happening in those countries that appear to have genuinely won a large part of the battle against this virus. Israel is one of those countries, a country that continues to provide India with a lot of aid as well at this hour. But Israel itself took the battle to COVID last year, aggressively vaccinating its population with the Pfizer vaccine. By April, 54% of the entire country and 88% of people aged 50 and older had received both jabs. And now Israel is carefully telling its citizens that they can unmask in situations in public, in the open, and that schools are now open as well for students. Joining us now to tell us not just about the remarkable story of Israel as the world goes through this crisis, but also to reflect on the aid which Tel Aviv is providing New Delhi. Remember, Israel and India are very close strategic allies. Dr. Ron Malka, the ambassador of Israel to India. Thanks, Dr. Malka, very much for speaking to us. My first question, there's a lot of aid coming India's way right now. What are some of the areas of aid that you're focusing on just now?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Well, we are mostly, focusing on support of equipment that is engaged with oxygen supply. So it's oxygen generators, oxygen concentrators in many shapes, and also I would say breathing technology, advanced breathing technology that we can provide, respirators, advanced ones, whatever we can just provide to extend the ability to provide more oxygen to those who need it at time.
And Ambassador, where is the aid going? Where are the oxygen generating plants going?
Well, it's going all over. Since we open few avenues of collaboration. It's not only a G2G collaboration. Most of it is G2G. So the government of Israel collected with a special task team that was designated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, led by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but with many disciplinaries. We sent G2G thousands of oxygen generators and concentrators to the government of India, the central government, and they decided divide it with the Red Cross. But only many other initiatives. All the private sector is also on hand with the public sector in Israel. All the people of Israel looking, searching every corner. Take, for example, Startup Nation Central Association that not only donated money, but also sent its people just to collect as much as equipment as we can from different places in Israel. So we are going to every corner. It's both the public and the private sector, private people, NGOs, all kinds of organizations, the Indo-Israel Chamber of Commerce, the Israeli Export Institute, so many organizations in Israel are on hand and doing whatever they do, searching every corner to send as much as oxygen equipment to India. And we sent until now, today was the third aircraft, cargo aircraft with thousands of generators and more to come.
Right. Well, that sounds fantastic. Ambassador, tell us a little bit about the remarkable story in Israel. How did Israel decide to fight COVID?
Well, we realized in the first beginning of the pandemic that what we need to do is to ease as much as we can the curve of infection until we get the vaccine, until a reliable vaccine will be developed. Once this vaccine was developed, we started with a very massive operation of vaccinating all the population. We managed to vaccinate in less than 3 months more than 90% of the eligible population for vaccination. And I think this is what works so well for us. That's how we came now to a stage that there is almost not an infection, with a few cases every day. The economy is totally open. We even let people, as you mentioned before, outdoors, not to wear masks, only indoors. And everything is open, schools, but all the economy, the businesses, everything is open. And now we are trying to keep this as it is now.
Ambassador, when Israel went about with its vaccination strategy, were people asked to come to vaccination centers, or did your doctors go to areas and communities and vaccinate them proactively there?
The thing is that since the establishment of the State of Israel, we decided to focus on human resources. We didn't have any natural resources. We start our nation from scratches. So we focused on education and healthcare, public healthcare. So we have very good, very efficient public healthcare facilities that are already there from the beginning. So each and every citizen needed to go to the center of public health in his neighborhood or whatever it is, and to get the vaccine. We just spread it all over the country, very well regulated and organized. So everyone that wanted and was available for vaccination got the vaccine.
And so now people are out on the beaches? Is that what's happening now? I mean, sooner than later, out in the open without a mask?
Yes, the beaches are full now. People are without masks. Not only the beaches, all the public places. Yes, people. Life is back to almost as normal as it was before the pandemic. Almost, I say, because there has been some changes.
Sure.
But mostly everything is open. The outdoors, nobody wear masks, only indoors, and that's how it is now.
And schools are open as well, and that's so important for a
Totally
younger
open.
generation.
Schools are totally open. But as I said, many people now in Israel are focusing on supplying. It touched so much our hearts, and we feel so connected and so strong emotionally connected with India. So many Israelis get tens of thousands of approaches and emails, messages of people in Israel that just want to contribute to help, to assist as much as they can with any equipment that they have. We now even renewing oxygen concentrators, different places. And after a quality test, we send them to India. So it's people-to-people effort and operation, and it warms the heart. And that's what we are focusing now. So it's not, even in schools, whoever can contribute, whatever they can do now, since understanding what is the situation now in India. I myself here with this special task team, but we get so much help. Everyone is on hand in Israel to see how we can support and help our friends back in India. And we don't forget that when this pandemic just broke out, India stood with us and helped us, first evacuating thousands of Israelis that were stranded all over India, providing us with medicines, with protecting gears, whatever we needed that we didn't have in Israel. This is the reflection of genuine friendship, and we know how to appreciate it very much. And now we show again how strong this friendship is, and how it's getting stronger and stronger from day to day.
Ambassador, it's such an important part, the emotional connect between our people. This time of the year is when we see hundreds, if not thousands, of Israeli nationals all over, for example, parts of Kashmir or Goa, elsewhere on their motorcycles, going up and down from Srinagar to Kargil and on to Leh. And they are so much a part of that entire area among so many other areas, and people have come to accept them very deeply. It's so sad that they won't be there this year, right? At least not for the foreseeable future.
Yes, but this is only temporary. I think that as much as the vaccination operation in India will advance and proceed, you will have the same results as we have in Israel. So it's mostly about vaccination. Vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. That's eventually what gives the real protection and stop the infection and really beats this pandemic. So vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. This is our experience. We are now working on sending delegations of experts from Israel to share our knowledge, our achievements, our experience fighting this pandemic. It's not only about equipment, it's also about experience that we share and expertise. So we are working on sending delegations of doctors and experts for fighting corona to India to assist as much as we can.
One or two more questions, Ambassador. Israel moved very quickly last year to acquire or to procure large doses of Pfizer. How was that key to your strategy, that you knew you had to vaccinate, so you needed to acquire? And you spent money on that, right? I mean, there was an outlay and you spent and you bought. Tell us about the thinking at that stage.
This is what we call very well spent money.
Yes.
Yes, with good income and profit, yes, yes. So once we realized that this is going to be the solution, whatever we did was temporary, just to ease, as I said, the infection curve, but eventually, in order to beat the pandemic, we need this vaccination. Once we realized that, yes, we reached out to those that produced the vaccine and made contracts. We were the first to make those contracts and to buy this vaccine. We paid very good price, but I think that it was one of our best investments, although we paid so much.
And Ambassador, of course, now there is no civil air traffic between Israel and India. You have very strict safeguards, obviously, in your country as well. Are you worried about this India mutant getting to Israel one way or the other?
What getting to Israel?
The mutant, the double mutant.
So it's not only India. I must say that we now understand that there is some dynamic with this misleading virus. And new mutants and variants are arising in different places in the world. And we understand that if you want to keep our achievements, we need to be very, very careful and really controlling those that are getting to Israel to see that we don't get any new variants and hopefully not variants that this vaccine that we cannot give protection to, because this also might happen. We don't have any evidence for that as of now, but all the experts say that it might happen because this virus has such kind of dynamics that we might find ourselves approaching a new variant that the vaccination that we have will not give protection. And that's what we are very concerned of. And that's why for many other countries in the world, we control and regulate those that come in just to see that we don't bring any more variants and keep our achievements.
All right, Dr. Malka, thank you very much for speaking to us, and thank you so much for your help. And this close relationship between people is something that really truly does define our equation. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Som, for inviting me. Thank you.